Hey, everybody, welcome back to another week here of podcasting stuffs. We kick it off once again with Star Trek Picard because we are getting right down to the wire of this first season, which I believe is only the 10 episodes long because this is episode 8, Broken Pieces. Now, a lot to talk about on this one, but if I was to preface this episode in my own terms and give it my own title, I would call it Conversation the Episode. This was very slow, very talky, more exposition. And I just need to know, we've had our ups and downs with this show over this season, but I think it's most apparent now in episode 8, since we're only doing 10 episodes per season, that the story structure in Star Trek Picard is really bad.
It's terrible.
The writing itself is really bad. I don't mean from a technical point of view or just like bad storytelling. I in just bad story structure. We are getting revelations in episode 8 that don't make sense unless you were playing the long game and really paying attention to everything, going back to like episode 1 or 2. Stuff that I call it Conversation the Episode because this is a exposition dump episode. It's just like, okay, everything got to slow down. Let's all get around this picnic table now. Literally get around this picnic table from a high school and shoot the shit.
Picnic table.
Yeah, and shoot the shit to catch the audience up on what's happening. Because it didn't really serve a purpose story-wise, but it's just like, hey, you guys have been here for a while. Let's make this whole episode a last time on Star Trek Picard and fill you in on the details instead of showing you the details, right? It's we're going to tell you what is happening or what has happened and not explain it. And I note that because Star Trek Picard loves flashbacks, right? I think of the 8 episodes so far, almost all of them, if not most of them, have started with a flashback 14-something years ago, right? Last time we got, what did we get last time? We had the Borg stuff that happened 14 years ago, right? Killing off Icheb. We've had flashbacks to Mars a couple of times. We do a lot of flashbacks. This episode in particular, they go into a number of cool and interesting story elements that get no flashback and just get one-off, like a sentence or two. Like, the cool stuff is happening outside of the world of Star Trek Picard. And for a show that loves to flashback, we get none of that where it should be. So going to the beginning of this episode, we get a flashback 14 years ago, except now it is Commodore O, not yet, but Romulan O. I guess it's Romulan O, in a black sort of veil with a number of other Romulan ladies about her in this on this planet called the Grief Planet or something like that, right? Something.
It's the
something of grief, like Aria of Grief, something silly, but it's like the grief world.
I stopped paying attention once the thing actually happened.
Yes, so they're around there, and she's given this little speech about the future and how about what we're going to show you here changes everything, which gets a little confusing in terms of how long the Zhat Vash has been around. Just again, because of the story structure-wise, it's difficult to kind of see what's going on. But essentially, it's the little Romulan secret society, which is apparently only 8 ladies. And they're sitting around this desert planet. And there's like a pool in the middle. And from this pool is got a little green raised ring that looks like one of those pizza container boxes things you find in a delivery order.
Yeah.
With the hole cut in the middle. So it looks like one of those things that come out and it's glowing green. So
little pizza table.
I call this the death orgy of the mind scene. And so she's explaining that the universe is going to end by the, what is it called? Like the admonition or something like that.
You have to watch the admonition or whatever the hell.
Yes, and you have to see what's coming. So again, it's like a future thing. And apparently the only way to do this is to grab on to this whirly bird thing in the center and you get exposed to this vision. So this
is when I sent you those messages.
Yeah, you sent me a bunch of messages, and this kind of confused me a little bit because we already saw Commodore O do this to Dr. Girardi, right?
I think
Aggie.
they explained it as she's half Vulcan, half Romulan, or
Right.
some crap.
And so
like
we
that.
had a pretty extended conversation about how she mind melded, and we thought, well, maybe, because they are split from the same race, maybe it's the same sort of idea, but maybe it's a violent or more a darker,
or she used some hidden tech to do it,
or something of that nature, right? Something we tried to make sense of it, like, oh, the Vulcans use it as a peaceful thing, Romulans use it as a weapon, kind of thing. Even though they've never shown this capability before, maybe it's reserved. Who knows? This time, they just grab this green ring, and they see the end of the universe and the end of the old universe. It gets a little weird.
And they see a flash of Sonny from iRobot.
They see the exact iRobot models from the Will Smith film. It's like a white android, and it's. I know why it's there. It's designed for stupid people, right? The show is very loved. If you go to all the comments and reviews and things, people loving it. It's pandering to you.
Oh, God.
So it's done that
it's
because
really highlighted by the fact that I'm watching all the way through TNG right now. I'm near the end of season 4.
Yeah, no, this show treats the audience like they're stupid.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, it feels a slight bit insulting.
It takes me an hour and a half to get through an episode of this shit when I'm watching it by myself.
Fans. And I can see it. I can see it in the comment sections of places. People going like, "This is the best thing ever. This is great." And it's. I've talked about this paint my number sort of thing. Like, it is feeding the script to the lowest common denominator.
This entire sequence was a fucking Doctor Who thing. It's not Star Trek.
It also doesn't make a lot of sense because the idea is that they saw the universe already end, and they see where it's going next. And apparently they all have visions of the iRobot and Data, who's in there. Some of these people probably don't even know who that is, but he's in there. And
he was in episode 1.
Yeah. And this is the same vision that Girardi got from Commodore O when she grabbed her. So we've seen all this since episode 1. But it's very confusing. So they see this mind meld vision touching this green rod. Then they just go fucking nuts, right? One Romulan lady blows her head off. Another one smashes herself with a rock until her head explodes.
Yeah, that was real great, wasn't it?
Yeah, the other one
starts
clawing her face off. Like, this is like some weird shit. Like, they can't handle it.
Mind if I go off on a tangent real quick?
Go for it.
Okay. You remember what Star Trek like little promos would be like back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I recently looked up a few, and I saw the one from that one where Quark has to fake being a female.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I remember that one.
And like the entire thing's like played for laughs. But back in the day, like there were ones where my dad would pick up on it, and he's like, "Okay, you're not going to watch this one because it's all like it's one of the sexy episodes. You're like too young for this shit." And they do that. Nobody can watch this show with their fucking kids.
No, this whole segment is some. I got some screen caps of it for this video that you're probably seeing right now if you're watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's fucking spectacular, isn't it?
Another person blows their head off, beats himself with a rock. Another one's clawing their face apart. And it feels like it sort of gave me the vibes like PG-13 vibes if this was like Event Horizon on TV, where they're all murdering themselves in space over that comm system. It was weird. And what I don't understand about that whole segment is it changes the entire lore of Star Trek. So what we learned in TNG was that everyone came from the same race, right? Remember?
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful episode.
That whole segment line where the Cardassians were there, the Romulans were there, the Vulcans were there.
And they find this embedded in like
Green were there or something like that. Everyone was there. They find out that
it was the Cardassians, the Klingons, and the Romulans.
That's right. The main
and they all all of them hate the message that they hear.
Yes,
I think
and
the
everyone's
Klingons
pissed.
like, if she wasn't already dead, I'd kill her.
And like the Federation's the only one that walks away saying, "Whoa, we're all one people."
That's
Essentially,
that's a comforting thing. Yeah.
the idea is that we were all seeded from the same place.
I think as the message goes, we explored the galaxy and were dismayed to find that there was no one else in it. So we
Yes.
decided to make you our children.
So we made it. And that
So that
also
we-
ties
yes.
back to the original series in the idea of, hey, why does everyone look the same in space, right? And of
Yeah,
course,
it
in the
explains the way we're
60s, it
recorded.
was the reason was because it was fucking television in the 60s. You had like $50 and a can of chips, and you were
I
like,
mean-
here, make something happen.
Even then, Star Trek wasn't a cheap show.
No, it was expensive, which is one of the reasons it was canceled.
It primarily got by on Lucille Ball's good graces.
Yes, because it was at the Desi Studios.
Yes.
And so one of the reasons it was canceled because it was expensive. But even then, comparing it now, you look back on it, it's like everyone looks the same. Well, that TNG's answer was we all came seated from the same place.
They had money for like bronzer and maybe some, I don't know, foam latex and
Some foam latex and
quilt
some color paint.
Yeah.
And so what we learn with this Death Orgy of the Mind segment is that there was a time 200,000 years ago. I'm not sure why they say that's the number. I'm not giving that number. That's what Picard says for some reason, and some other people, right?
Yeah,
About
that
200
one confused me. But
about
we'll get to
200,000 years ago, which isn't a long time.
that.
Is it
in the
200,000 or
grand scheme of,
200
like,
million? I'm
the
pretty sure they say
universe?
200,000, right?
In the grand scheme of the universe? No, that's not a long time.
I'm pretty sure he didn't say 200 million. Like, I think they said 200,000 years ago.
I don't remember because
I could be wrong.
I had to pause this like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, you guys in the comments might want to check me on that. But he says a number that seems like not that long ago. And what happened then was a race of beings created synthetics. And you got the iRobot situation, which this all alludes to that shitty Isaac Asimov joke in episode 1 where he goes, I'm not really into science fiction.
Well, I mean, the entire conceit of Data was a nod to Asimov. But
Yes.
the problem is it's a difference in tone between TNG and whatever the fuck this shit is.
And so what happened is essentially they got so advanced that they created their own artificial intelligence. And it apparently, I don't think it ran amok. I think they just created it, right? I don't think there's been an explanation that the AI that they created or the sense that these old timers created took over the universe, rather that when they created these synths, the destroyer came. And then the destroyer wiped everyone out and the universe started up again, right? Something like it gets very confusing. I have it here. Where the hell did I write it? They came, the destroyer destroyed things, they started again, and so the idea was that the remnants of whatever society was left a message to the future, right? They didn't write things down. They didn't
stars.
They didn't encode something in DNA. They didn't make something that would like make sense. What they did,
the test of time.
Yeah, they created a solar system with 8 suns or something like that, or 8 planets.
Yeah.
Orbiting 8 suns, an octogenarian thing, or octo something, octuplet
Octonary.
thing. Octonary star
Because
system.
7 is septenary and binary is 2, so.
Right. And so they say,
So
well, you can have 7. That's pretty rare, but here are 3 examples.
Yeah, the ENH
Yes.
says that.
And then she's like, well, what about 8? And he goes, he's like, well, that's impossible. That's essentially impossible. Oh, well, if you made something like that, you would probably want people to know about it. But how would they know about it if you put it somewhere where no one is? Again, it's confusing.
It's a wall banger.
What matters here is that the world is going to end because of synths, right? And this essentially to me feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy later on. But what we learn from that is we've seen all these scenes before, is that Commodore O is there. Her creepy lieutenant that loves her brother is there, right? Her protege. And the crazy Romulan lady from a couple episodes back that got assimilated is there as her aunt. She calls her auntie. I'm not sure why Romulans have aunts or call them aunties, but it's very strange. So crazy redhead lady that calls Soji the Destroyer doesn't kill herself, but goes nuts. Right? She goes crazy.
She tried to kill herself.
She tries to kill herself. Problem. This throws. I don't know if I'll touch on this now, but this ruins the Borg even more. And here's
I'm
why.
not surprised anymore.
So that got me thinking. Okay, we have no indication of why the Borg artifact became the Borg artifact, right? We all we know is that the last thing it assimilated was those Romulans. And remember, we had a conversation a few podcasts back saying, jokingly, remember, I think I jokingly said that the Borg can't assimilate Romulans now because they have some special power. Remember, because all the XBs were Romulans or something. All the crazy ones were Romulans. Well, that tended to be pretty correct in terms because Auntie Lady was on the Tal Shiar ship that got assimilated. And it was her craziness that helped disconnect this cube from the collective.
Yeah.
Right?
The collective will disconnect a cube that's been infected by something stupid.
Yes. Her craziness brought down an entire cube during her assimilation. That's stupid. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But what, and I have here in my notes, crazy Romulan lady kills Borg cube with her crazy. But that also ties into how much of a disservice this show is doing to Star Trek Voyager. Because 14 years ago is when this crazy Romulan lady went crazy touching that green ring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That was 14 years ago.
And
that's post-Voyager.
Yeah.
Okay? This is post-Nemesis. This is post-Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that she then was assigned to a Tal Shiar ship, which was then assimilated by the Borg. That means that the Borg cubes are still in our sector assimilating species. That means everything Voyager did leading up to their finale was for nothing because...
Well, I mean, it was, but...
Voyager shut down the collective's ability to get here through their transwarp conduits.
Yeah, they wrecked the transwarp conduit.
That's the entire crux of that final episode where they come through, they blow up the whole system. Now, they don't destroy the collective, but they make it very clear that they can't get here anymore.
Admiral Janeway gets to thumb her nose at the Queen one last time.
Yes, and then you also still have Janeway, assuming that she's still around in this timeline, which probably is, as an admiral, probably in charge of handling anything related to the Borg. Right?
Here's my thoughts on that.
It would only make sense.
Missed opportunity to not make her be the admiral that's screaming at Picard all the time. That would have been great.
That would have been hilarious. So in story world, you would see how she's made an admiral and in charge of any sort of Borg sort of response or research because she has the most experience at this time with them. Clearly, her and her crew. So that makes sense. But now the Borg are still in Romulan space just assimilating random ships. That doesn't make any sense.
There's a lot of that going around in this episode.
Why are they doing it? It's like this series, the writers are just tangentially pulling stuff like, oh, remember that? Let me pull from that. But I'm not going to give, the full context of that. Oh, that was cool. I'm going to pull some of this. But all the threads connecting that thing, I'm going to cut away. It doesn't make...
They don't comprehend.
It doesn't make any goddamn sense. And so this all has to do with the very opening scene. We're talking about the flashback and the speaking and the talking. I'm telling you, within a few minutes, we're not even done with the cold open yet. And it has done a disservice to the Borg, and it has ruined everything Voyager ended on. Just like peace out. And now that the Borg apparently can just be beat the fuck up by a crazy Romulan lady. That's it. Mm-hmm. You just infect every cube. You have a winning strategy right there.
I mean, it worked. It worked on Voyager when they programmed themselves with a virus.
Right.
Remember
that? The Borg are fucking stupid now. So
the guys were like, this one alien race was like, okay, we injected our people with this shit that'll fuck up the Borg.
That's right.
And have them get assimilated, and it worked. But Voyager put a stop to it because it's like that's hilariously unethical.
And
Which
the
is funny for
Romulans here are
Janeway.
totally unethical. So it's just like, here, put a bunch of people, let them touch the
Yeah.
green shit, and then just send them to get assimilated. Borg threat done.
Mhm.
So a lot of problems right off the bat. So we move on from there, still prior to the cold open ending. Still haven't hit the intro. We jump back to the Borg cube. Q's already dead. And Elnor has just hit the Fenris Ranger tab. And he's hiding in the same set he was before because this is a slower bottle episode where we're trying to save some money for the big finale. That understandable happens in most series. Right towards the end, you want to save a few bucks for the big bang. So this is a talkie episode, rehash of sets, and I'll get to how lazy it gets in a second, but it gets a little bit lazier when it even goes back to the Chateau set. So Seven gets the cube in a fucking instant, apparently. She's just down the road, I guess. Saves Elnor. Comes in, guns blasting, knows exactly where he is because there's only one Borg set. Blasts a couple Romulans, and he hugs her. And she's like, "Oh, I'm here. It's all right."
Where's Hugh?
Where's Hugh? And that's the last mention we get of Hugh.
Because that's the explanation for how Legolas found the Fenris Ranger's key fob.
Yes. That's the only mention of Hugh this episode from 7. Hey, where's Hugh? Elnor doesn't say he's dead. He just hugs her, and that's it. And she goes, "That's cool." And then, boom, we cut to the title. So that part, I understand what's happening there because it makes sense, but 7 gets messed up a little bit later here. So we cut back to the ship, and all I can remember from the rest of this episode in terms of Picard is he is acting like a really bad captain. Like, he is acting very counterproductive to who he's been. And what I mean by that is after we come back, we go to Aggie or Dr. Girardi. She's no longer in her coma. The medical hologram is there and says, "Hey, she shut me off. I don't know what's happening." They figure out that she killed Maddox.
Mm-hmm.
Picard doesn't believe the explanation at all. Like, he downright says, no, she didn't do it. She couldn't do it.
Well, what happens first is that Rios has a massive mental breakdown.
Yes, Rios does have a mental breakdown.
The second they get on the ship.
The second they get on the ship, he sees Soji, and he fucking loses his shit. After that, he pieces out, so we're left with the holograms around there, which I noted are the best part of this whole episode. Just because it's the only levity we got in this incredibly depressing world that is not escapism or optimism. I'm not getting any of that from there. So
when Star Trek was escapism and optimism?
Yeah, when you could dream of a better tomorrow because the today kind of sucked, and that was the point. I don't want to see the today in the today in my tomorrow. So Picard is acting like a shitty captain. He's just like, he's blowing things off, and we figure out that she was that she had a chip in her. She's like, "Yes, I took it out. Commodore O did this to me.
I threw up the Flintstones chewable vitamin."
Right. And so we get like essentially an explanation to all the characters on the ship that, hey, let's all get on the same page, but we're running out of time, so let's do it all over someone talking. So she explains what's going on. Commodore is the bad guy. Everyone's on the same page. Picard leaves saying, "Put me in contact with Starfleet Command." Everyone starts freaking out because they don't know what's going on. And he says, "Just do it." So he goes to his chateau room set, which I guess is the cargo bay, whatever the fuck is going on. And I just have here written in my notes, "Shut the fuck up."
The Admiral, again.
Yeah, so he's sitting there, apparently patched into Starfleet Command, and he is being an asshole, saying, "I need a fleet. I told you this would happen. Here's yada, yada, yada." And look, we talked about the Admiral, who he's talking to, the woman from Starfleet Command before, and how she was wrong in what she was doing, right? She was incorrect, but Picard was also coming at her like an asshole.
Yeah.
Right?
Like he still had rank.
Like he still had rank. Like you don't do that. You know, right? You don't quit something and then 20 years later go back to your old job and say, "Hey, fuckers, do it like this. This is what needs to happen right now today." Right? And
Do
then
you remember
she
the episode
screams,
Drumhead?
"Yes, exactly. I know which one you're talking about." And so she says that famous line that you know is the sheer fucking hubris. Right? I still remember that in my
Shut
head.
the fuck up. Yeah.
And so she comes back this time and he does the exact same thing. I need a fleet. I need ships. They're going after this planet. These synthetics, their lives need to be saved. Like that fucking matters. The ban is still effect, right? Pretty sure Starfleet doesn't just change policy overnight. You got to go through proper channels. You can't just get an entire policy like that overturned in 30 seconds.
Given the holograms, they're still okay with AI.
Yeah.
So what's
So
the point?
he's just like, hey, there's a shitload of synths. We need your help. And he's yelling at her. And she just says, shut the fuck up. And I am all on board with her at this point. Even though I know she's the bad guy and wrong, I'm just like, I'm in the same boat going, yeah, this old man is like just bipolar or something, because he is like your friendly neighborhood therapist one second and the next moment he's yelling down your throat.
It's working in your direction. Let it work in your.
And so and she's like not interrupted. She's not yelling. But then she just has it. She's like, shut the fuck up, dude. And then she says, we're sending you a goddamn fleet. Chill. You don't have to yell at me. Right. And so what I note there is that she is sitting in the chair across from him like she's in the room. A very weird non-Star Trek-y sort of thing. Yeah. Because she's not on the screen. She's not in the digital display. It's not even done like in Discovery where they're sort of hologrammy a little bit.
Which I hated, but...
and they can walk around, which at least made more sense. Like, okay, if you're the sci-fi world, maybe you have little hollow emitter, visual emitters, whatever. I don't give a shit, but it's still silly. We saw this attempted in Deep Space Nine during the Maquis arc. If you remember, the Defiant was outfitted with a Sega activator in the back where they could display a real person, even though it was a hologram. It didn't look like a hologram. They only used it once. And they tried, it was in an episode where his security chief, the Federation issued one, went bad and turned to the Maquis. It was a weird Maquis arc. And they had it, literally, it was like a Sega activator painted gray on the back of the Defiant, where he would turn around and he would talk to whoever he was talking to. Could have been the Admiral, could have been the bad guy, but it was a way to cut costs, right? You wouldn't have to digitize a screen. You wouldn't have to do any overlays. You could literally just have a guy stand there. Just have the actor there with you. Didn't work out. It was also silly. But in this regard, she was just there sitting in his chair. Like, I don't understand the logistics of how that would work. I didn't hate it in Discovery so much, but I did hate it the first time we saw it in Discovery Season 1, where he's walking and then he leans back on the desk in the room he's at. Right? Do you remember that at the Battle of the Binary Stars, right before everything goes down? And
I remember hating it because it was not consistent with the level of technology. It's
not consistent with the era at all. But he's talking to her in like a phase blue kind of thing, and then he leans against her desk. Like,
is his desk in the exact same spot?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. My mind blows. Like, in this situation, like, how is she sitting in his chair? I know she's probably in a chair, but like my mind just goes nuts at the requirements.
She's on a holodeck running the chateau as well.
And I see this as like just an energy consumption sort of thing. Like, why would you create the ability to replicate her sitting in a chair when none of that is necessary? Just put her face on the pad or something. It's dumb. So she says, shut the fuck up. You're getting your fleet. It's fine. It's kind of a callback to that first episode, but her saying something's up. Now, he doesn't mention Commodore O. He doesn't mention anything else. He may have, and I missed it. I don't think I did. But let's just say that she does the right thing and she's sending a fleet. Maybe we'll come in the future and we'll get some actual Star Trek ships here as opposed to whatever this Star Wars ship we're on. So
I wouldn't bet on it.
Rios has sequestered himself in his room. He's having a mental breakdown. And Raffi is trying to figure out what the hell is going on. She's serving as the proxy for the audience. Like, what the fuck is going on? She figures it out by going to all the holograms, which finally we start learning their names 8 episodes in. All the holograms are based off Rios because he likes himself or whatever the reason. They talk about it. I wasn't paying attention. It started to get silly at this point.
As as they explain it, he engaged like the automatic, like just neuroscan or whatever the fuck.
Yes, and never changed it,
and never bothered changing it. But he'd go in and like delete random shit, like my grandpa would.
So he just likes it. So Raffi goes to the bridge. They don't know Rios has sequestered himself at this point. We do, but the rest of the crew doesn't. And she starts talking to the navigation hologram, thinking it's Rios. And there's a nice, cute little back and forth, and it's silly and it's fun. We later come to find out she talks to all of them, right? And we see all of them. We see a new one for the first time. We see the engineer, which I didn't even know they had to this point.
Doing a Scottish accent,
which I know. I call him the Scotty Hollow.
Yeah.
Which I actually loved because it's a really bad accent.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
And because James Doohan wasn't Scottish.
Yeah,
he's Canadian.
Nobody can do a Scottish accent.
So he was doing
a Sean Connery, but I can't do a Scottish accent.
So everyone that, essentially because Star Trek became so popular, like every Scottish accent that you hear from like TV is like badly done because of James Doohan.
It's either that or someone doing a terrible Sean Connery.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't know, I just gave him a Scottish accent, that'd be nice. So that's a fun little thing. And Rios is really, we're starting to see like him and Raffi are like the best parts of the show. Because Raffi's the only one really trying to make sense of things, at least attempting to. And Rios is getting to act his ass off in all these different holograms.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's funny and I like him. And it's cool as an actor, I guess, because it lets you really play the emotional gamut. Because we see the tactical one who's like that cool rebel dude and it's got like combat boots on, long hair. You see the hospitality one, which is like a hipster dude. See the Scottish engineer, the really like prim and proper doctor and all that stuff. So we see that it's fun. That's it. And Raffi's arc is really just finding out what happens to Rios, why seeing Soji has them all fucked in the head. So we move from there back to the cube, and we get what we've been hinted at is the connection between 7 of 9 and the cube again, right? So she gets there, and this is where you texted me around this time again when you saw this, and it drove you a little crazy.
Yeah.
The cube, and I have a question here.
Mm-hmm.
7 gets there. They go back to the same room where Hugh was, where the queen visited, right? She didn't live there because they don't make it clear, and Eleanor's like, did she live here? Or, I guess she just visited. 7 takes over the cube in a very simple...
I need to grab something.
And silly way. So she stands on the plate, and a couple of little doodads come and attach to her spine. Mm-hmm. She gets downloaded. Her eyes go all black, get all spacey. And she becomes the Borg Queen. They explain it that she's not actually the Borg Queen, but she's like the queen of this new collective, which is essentially just that cube. Okay? So she is in control of just this. It's not attached to the collective. I don't think it's attached to the collective. They never make it really clear. I don't think it is, but there's an insinuation later in the episode that we'll touch back on that. So
we're like 14 minutes in.
Yeah, we're only like 14 minutes in. So she is now the queen of this cube, and she starts activating things. Now, my first note, and I have a couple, but my first note of this whole segment is, if this cube can regenerate itself, because as soon as she takes over, we see like these nanite ships start moving around and like piecing things together, right? And like these drone ships are moving. It looks like this cube is repairing itself, which we have seen cubes do since the first time we saw them in TNG, right? As soon as they took any damage, they start fixing themselves. if this cube can regenerate itself simply by Seven saying, "Hey, fix yourself," why would the Borg cut it loose?
Because crazy.
I ask this because we've talked about how the Borg will cut away something if it doesn't understand what's going on. But if this cube was in Romulan space, then the only theory that I think has to hold is that this cube was on its way here prior to when the transwarp conduit blew 14 years ago. Right? And so we have a reverse Voyager situation, except with the Borg, that this cube must have been en route somewhere near Romulan space. Janeway blows up the transwarp conduits. It gets flung out. It's on its own. So if you're on your own in that part of space, you simulate some Romulans, you think that would be a vital cube now to the collective because it's probably one of the only ones still out here. And we've learned that the Borg have a queen, and the queen isn't stupid, and the queen literally hates Janeway with a passion at this point and would do anything to murder her. So to cut this cube loose in Romulan space because of one crazy Romulan lady makes less sense at this point if Seven can simply jack into it and start repairing itself. That makes no sense to me. And what happens here is we cut back a lot between what's happening on the ship and the Borg cube. We cut back in Rios clones or Rios holograms are doing their thing. The cube situation is concerning. And it's concerning because bad Romulan lady knows what's happening. She knows Seven's there. She says, "Oh shit, the cube's starting to reactivate. What do we do?" She makes the logical assumption that, well, we better fucking get rid of these drones, right?
How long would it take us to kill all of them?
How long would it take us to kill them? Can we gas them?
Everybody's like, it would be easier if we just, vacuumed them out into space.
And she goes, do it.
Oh, I like that idea.
I like that. At least she may be the bad guy, but at least she's making some common sense. And she's like the only person asking for a question, like help. She's like, "Hey, can you give me some advice here?" She's acting like, so at least she's trying.
That's how low the bar is.
That's how low the bar is when the bad guys are acting more Star Trek-y than the Star Trek people. She's like, she's a bad guy. And she's asking like a random Centurion, "Hey, I need options. Give me options." Mm-hmm. She's acting like someone like a captain of a starship would. Centurion says, "Hey, let's blow them out into space." They say, "Cool, let's do it." A lot of problems with that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of problems from her point of view, because let's say the Romulans hadn't had a ton of interaction with the Borg.
It gets an immediate problem, somewhere else.
It gets an immediate problem in terms of Star Trek, but in terms of what she is doing, I think it's the right call.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't seen a lot of talk about the Borg and the Romulans.
Oh, no, that's what I meant. It's a smart idea because it lets her get that problem away from her.
Yes, it makes perfect sense if you are that person. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work in Star Trek because the Borg don't need air.
Nope.
Right.
There's an entire scene in First Contact that takes place in, I believe, the deflector dish.
Yes, they're walking upside down, and the Borg cube people are just on the deflector dish on the outside of the ship,
and servicing like swatting at him with his batleth.
Yes.
They
don't need air.
Yeah.
There is only a minimal life support system on most cubes in certain areas, I think we learn, because of some reason, right? Because they're doing simulations.
The original research was Borg babies.
Yes, right? Like there's totally children or there's some... They mentioned it on TNG. I can't recall it off the bat. Yeah, they mentioned something like, "Hey, there's a very bare minimum of life support here. Mm-hmm. Just in case," or something, right? But these Borg
in the absence of atmosphere, so
that makes sense. Most important Star Trek film of the TNG era literally shows Borg just wandering on the outside of the ship, like it's no big deal. And
I think Hawk was one of them, and he wasn't even fully assimilated at that point.
That's true. Yes, because he had a cracked face thing, and he was still going once he got assimilated. Yes, so that doesn't make sense in terms of Star Trek, because now you just have hundreds of thousands, 10,000 plus Borg people just spat out into space that have been reactivated.
Floating around.
They're still alive. They're still Borg. You've just created a gigantic problem
For somebody else.
for somebody else in Romulan space, because as it's been made painfully clear to us, all it takes is one Borg drone to fuck up an entire planet, right?
Imagine getting one of those on your windshield.
Just imagine flying by tens of thousands. We're talking about drones, and you're just warping through. You say, "Hey, look, there's a big old pile of debris here. Let's stop and look." Oh, fuck! The universe is dead.
Like driving through a cloud of bugs.
Like driving through a cloud of bugs. Incredibly goddamn stupid. The only thing this scene served to do is to make Seven of Nine the Borg Queen, because she doesn't do anything with it.
Well, other than possibly piss off Janeway.
She's too late, right? Except betrayed everything that Voyager is, and she has come full circle. She is the queen now. But as queen of this cube, she does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time she gains control by dicking around, and I note here, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I put that these non-physical controls bug the shit out of me.
Yes, I was just about to bring that up. I'm like, why does this have the
what does the
Tony
Borg
Stark
have
controls?
We talked about an older cube. We talked about the Federation having it and how we don't like it. But it would make sense that the Federation is evolving, and every series would, in theory, if it's in a different time, have their own style. TOS had very physical, clicky buttons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And things because of the time period it was filmed in, and there was explanations for that, right? We talked about that as well. The way the Constitution classes probably felt very naval-ish, right? If you went onto a naval ship today, it would look kind of old-fashioned-y in terms of style, because efficiency, and if you're in the middle of nowhere, you need to repair something quickly, right? So you don't want something overly complex and fancy to break on you when you're millions of miles away. TNG had the LCARS menu system, right? Because it was like the golden age. It was clean.
Which
it
was
pure.
Touchscreen before touchscreen existed.
And it was touchscreens before touchscreens, so it still looked futuristic and it was nice and clean. So the Federation evolving into this motion control thing makes sense, but it doesn't feel
Star
like
Trek at all.
It's Star Trek-y, like it created. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even mean Star Trek-y. It's like that didn't create it. It feels like it's stolen from something else.
Of course it did. It stole it from fucking Avengers.
Tony Stark. Yes. So like the LCARS menu system, when you see that in TNG era and like Deep Space Nine, and Voyager,
that's them.
That is a Star Trek look. That is a Star Trek. Yes, a Star Trek design, which no other thing has ever attempted to or tried, because it would be like stealing from it. Like, and it's also because it's trademark. It's the LCARS menu system is property of CBS. Pretty sure it is. And that was its style. But you can look at that and it hasn't been pulled from everything. People pull from it in terms of the real world. This feels like you're in Tony Stark armor. And we said, okay, we'll give the Federation a pass. It doesn't make sense that they'll tweak things, whatever. But for the Borg to have it, two things don't work in the slightest. One, like you mentioned, this is an old cube. This is not some fancy new, like octahedron. This is not a hexagon ship or some new design.
It's not something they made to keep up with the Federation.
Right. It's a cube. It's always been a cube. They don't evolve things until they need to, and they don't fuck around. So 14 years ago, when they last came to Earth or dealt with us, we were in biogel packs and LCAR menu system. All of a sudden, now they have the same technology as a Federation. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. Okay. 2, why would the Borg need Tony Stark armor systems? Why would the Queen need Tony Stark armor systems? I understand.
They're constantly interfaced with their ship.
Yes, when they're walking around in TNG, you do see them tapping on things that don't look like LCARs. It's all green, right? Those little green things. Usually to open something or close something. Fine. But when shit is getting done, it is being done neurally, and the Queen is in charge of everything.
Or with the little, arm things.
Yeah. Or her arm things. Why would the Queen need to teleport onto this cube through their magic teleporting system and then start twisting the air and knobs around like a human being? That doesn't make sense because the Borg have assimilated everything. How does that work if you've assimilated a lobster creature? How are they going to work anything? What is happening? This doesn't make sense for them to have. So I figured that when she fused or interfaced, it would all be in her mind, or she would be hitting panels or something because it's an old cube. Nope, it's the same thing that Rios has. It's just green.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look Borg. It doesn't look any
No.
different. The overlays don't look any different. It's just like, oh shit, now it's green instead of orange. And that really bugged the shit out of me. So 7 fails, essentially, to save any of the Borg. And we break away from her to go back to the ship. And then we get this explanation of Rios and his past because Raffi's in there chit-chatting with him.
Oh, this was the other part that I sent you a message on.
Oh boy, there's a couple things here. So before we get to Rios, and spliced in between that is now Soji talking to Aggie, Dr. Girardi, for some reason alone, I think. I'm not sure why. What we find out is that because of synthetic life, the Destroyer will come.
Mm-hmm.
And the Destroyer will come to destroy, I guess, everything because they think artificial intelligence or synths are bad. I'm not sure how they judge it. I'm not sure how this thing would know when someone gets it. I have a problem because data already exists. I have a problem because Dr. Noonien Sung has already created other synths. I would assume that in the scope of the universe, synthetics are a thing that are being worked on or have been worked on by other races and cultures.
But
apparently,
not the Romulans.
But apparently not the Romulans. But apparently, it's only really important when the Federation does it. Then we're all bad. It's really fucking. It's really fucking depressive. So
you remember the Battlestar Galactica reboot?
Yes, I do.
Remember how it did this exact thing?
Yes, it
and
did.
Better, even though it ended terribly.
It's all stealing. This just feels lifted from other things that have already done it well enough that it shouldn't have been lifted. And what I note here is, because of synthetic life, and I put in quotations, hell will come. Remember, Aggie says, do you believe in hell, Picard?
Because I've seen it.
Which is a weird thing to say in Star Trek. And he goes, no. And she goes, I didn't think so either until I saw it. So...
Do you remember Devil's Due?
Yes, I do remember.
That one woman,
none of this makes sense.
Here's the fucking devil. And he's like, I don't believe that shit.
No, and I have here written, highlighted here, that whole segment just gave me Star Trek 5 feels. Do you believe in hell? No, it's like, I am. What does God need with a starship? It just felt like the second you start doing this hell and heaven and like Judeo-Christian gods and demons, it stops working in this world that they've built. It just stops working. Okay. And the silliest episodes of the original series are when they played with, even then, when they went and
who will mourn for Apollo?
Yes, you got the, like Roman and Greek stuff because they were there. And then you got like Egyptian stuff pops up. And then you get like floating Lincoln in space. They were silly.
It's so extreme that like by Picard's time, a lot of his logs were like, this can't possibly be real. He was huffing like space spores or something.
Yeah,
right?
They're looking. Yeah, whenever they call back on stuff from like the original series, they're always just like, that can't. What was happening out there? And they always play it off like this was the Wild West. The Constitution ships were in the middle of nowhere. They saw a bunch of weird shit that they probably couldn't explain, and they did the best with their logs. They really sometimes like played it off like Kirk and them were like just crazy people out there sometimes. Like, how could
Saurian brandy?
Yeah, and they make mention of it like, God, could you imagine being out there in the middle of nowhere alone with buttons and knobs and like no holiday? Yeah. So they literally make fun of that kind of stuff. So apparently it's hell. Because a destroyer comes. We don't have any indication of what that does. It's just we know it now. So we flash back to Rios and he explains his past, which is the most interesting part of this episode. We hear about something called the Black Flag Directive. Now, the Black Flag Directive is something instituted by Commodore O. So the backstory here is that Commodore O we now know is an infiltrator, right? Commodore O 14 years ago infiltrated Starfleet Command, worked her way up the ranks. She then, with the sole goal, remember, her only goal wasn't to destroy the Federation. Up until that point, apparently, she was a really good officer and really good commander of Starfleet security. Her only goal was to prevent the death of the universe and stop all synthetic life. Now, Data was still around, apparently, or dead by this point. I think he was dead by the time she must have become the head of Starfleet security. But the division, Bruce Maddox, was still around. Apparently, she let that grow. It does. A lot of this doesn't make sense. She could have just ended funding. She could have done a lot of things, but didn't.
She instead took the dumbest possible path forward.
She took the dumbest possible path forward. So we hear about Rios and the Ibn Majid ship, a heavy cruiser out in space. Now they get to a sector of space where they encounter a small craft as a first contact. They don't know what the species are. They don't know who these are, but they make first contact, and they do the traditional Starfleet thing. They invite them on board. They have a dinner. They get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
The captain of the ship relays the information back to Starfleet Command. Hey, we've made first contact. This is who they are. This is what they are. They're synthetics.
Mm-hmm.
They are synths.
And it's
now
unambiguously going through Commodore O.
Yes, unambiguously coming. Yeah, they are synths, and just says, "Hey, we found apparently a race of synths. What do we do?" No one knows this except the captain and Rios, probably a first officer, because you're not going to broadcast. You don't broadcast this thing to the whole ship. Maybe the senior crew knows, but it's a first contact thing. You're not going to tell a midshipman down in engineering what the fuck's going on for two people.
Yeah, you're not going to tell your ensigns.
So he happily tells Starfleet Command what's going on because that's his job and that's the normal thing to do. Commodore O is now in charge. She initiates the Black Flag Directive. Now, what this is she tells the captain of the Ibn Majid to kill both passengers. Doesn't give a reason why. Doesn't say what. He confirms the orders. He doesn't have a choice. He finds out there are synths, apparently. We don't know what is said. This is the one part of the episode where I wish we got a flashback. Because
a flashback would have helped this.
This is the most interesting part. And I think I've mentioned this before in other episodes. The stuff that's not happening on screen or other characters are goddamn much more interesting than what we're getting right here.
Mm-hmm.
I would have this is the one part where you needed a flashback. Fuck that beginning flashback with the 8 people that just go crazy. We've already seen that stuff. That could have been told to us. How cool would it have been with the money they got to flashback to a brand new Starfleet ship type, right? Because I looked this up. It looks like a Sovereign in the picture, but it's not. It's a heavy cruiser, and it's called on Memory Alpha an Ibn Majid type because, of course, it's
nobody's putting effort into this shit.
It's a stupid Star Trek thing, but the first ship is now the name of it's dumb, right? I like the name. I don't want that class to be called that because that's just lazy. So
usually you name the first ship out of it. Class,
yes.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way around. So he gets the call saying they're synths, they need to be destroyed. He's in a tough spot. He doesn't know why because you're a captain, and when you get orders, you don't know why. Maybe they're bad people, maybe they're rogue synths. Who knows? Clearly he knows Data was around.
Mm-hmm.
Data was a legend in Starfleet, right? Especially for his sacrifice, saving essentially the Federation.
We went over this last week. He had every honor.
Yeah, everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew who he was. So many supplementary stories had him in charge of the Enterprise later on. He's a legend. And because he was an android, a synthetic, he is probably required reading at Starfleet, right? Mm-hmm. Academy. And he's also at the top of his class. You see those accolades at Starfleet Academy. It's like Spock and Data, back and back, fighting right as the number one in history. So he kills them. He shoots them both in the head, point blank, after dinner, after getting his things with a phaser that doesn't set off the alarms, but he shoots them Rios says, "What the fuck is happening?" Confronts him. Says, "Whoa, this isn't cool. This ain't what's happening. This ain't what's going down." Captain has reservations. He said he probably killed them because he thought they weren't real people or synthetics, and it'd be easier. Makes him go nuts. Puts a gun to his mouth.
He told Rios that it was the black flag. The black flag.
Yeah, yes, he tells him it was the black flag directive.
I don't know why, but I had to do it.
Yes, and I don't have a choice. We've seen these before. The Omega directive.
Yes.
Right? When the Omega particle shows up, the captain gets a special readout, and he says, "Destroy it at all cost, even at the cost of your ship and crew."
Yep.
Right? That was a total secret. We only got that in Voyager because they're stranded. And Voyager, remember, Janeway says, "Well, Starfleet Command isn't here, so I'm sitting you guys down to tell my senior staff, because you're serving as my Starfleet Command. I need to tell you what's going on because we're alone." So this stuff does exist. Okay?
Yes.
Makes sense. He can't come to terms with that he just murdered 2 first contact people because he's a good man. And he ends up blowing himself apart, sticks the phaser in his mouth, blows it up. And Rios has mentioned that he's watched his last captain splattered against a bulkhead. So that drove Rios insane.
This is what made me send that message to you.
Yes.
Because
Rios
apparently
goes insane.
phasers work like guns.
Because apparently phasers just work like guns. Splattered against the bulkhead. There's no splatter in Star Trek at all.
When you phaser someone on kill, they disintegrate.
They just disintegrate. So I don't know what they're using, but he's dead. Funny enough, later on in the Borg Cube section or previous, the girl's phaser breaks on her using it. Like,
oh yeah,
remember that?
Well, no, it wasn't. It a disruptor?
It's a Romulan disruptor, but it breaks after like 5 shots.
It like overheats or something.
Like a stupid reason that's like that. Like,
yeah,
you guys are smart. Why would you create something that can only shoot 4 or 5 times before it? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
craps out.
Like,
yeah,
like it's a gun that got jammed. Like, look, what is happening? That doesn't happen. Phasers run out of charge.
They are simple binary computers. They don't have.
Yeah, they can't make things work. So that's the black flag directive. He kills himself, and he does. Remember, he does it because he's ordered to, for one, and 2 because Commodore O says, "If you don't do this and let them leave, I will destroy your ship. The Ibn Majid and everyone on board will not make it home, and we will blow you out of space somehow."
Which they can do. Can't they transmit a?
Yeah, they can transmit a kill code probably, or they can easily tell a Section 31 ship, or they can tell another ship saying, "Hey, the Ibn Majid has been infected with something or has gone rogue. Take them out." There's a lot of ways they could fuck this up, do something about it. So he does the only thing he thinks to save his crew. He goes crazy.
Kills himself.
So that's Rios's reason for leaving. He gets kicked out because of PTSD, because he's the only one other than the captain that knows what happened. The rest of but what's funny is that the Ibn Majid, the crew's alive. The ship didn't get destroyed, as far as we know. Starfleet deleted all records of it. But what happened to the crew? You know what I mean? Like, how do you erase a ship, but then what are you going to do with the heavy cruiser crew, which has to be thousands of people?
At least several hundred.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're talking about
Galaxy class, like where we have
family. If it's a heavy cruiser, we're talking at TNG era, at least the Enterprise C size, which is still massive.
Yeah. Enterprise C
thousands and thousands of people.
No, Enterprise C was 100. The D was thousands because
the D was thousands
and everything.
So you still have these people that you have to move somewhere. You have to do something with. You can't just all kick them out or move them. And then what are they going to say? Oh, I served on this. Well, no, you didn't. It doesn't exist. It just leaves way too many questions to not blow up that ship. Right? And maybe Rios survive somehow. It's the incompetence of Commodore O here at play. Like, okay, I get earlier when they say you can't find. Remember, he tells Picard in like episode 2 or something, 1 or 2, where I served on the Ibn Majid. You won't find it in records. It's been wiped. Now, I saw that as, okay, that makes sense. Starfleet fucking blew up the ship somehow, right? Self-destructed. Rios got out somehow. That'll be interesting to find out. Nope.
But they
Apparently the ship's fine.
Mm-hmm.
They just, I don't know. They threw it into the sun, I guess, or something later. It's fucking stupid. So everything goes back to the ship, and this is where we get to the picnic table scene. And I mean picnic table scene because it's literally a picnic table.
Oh, God,
it is one of those iron grated tables wrapped in rubber, like a hard rubber.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You would sit at the lunchtime in high school. In my high school, they were like green. You can find them in parks. It's little, almost chain link looking thing with
sort of rubberized
4
coating.
seats around it. Yeah. Looks really silly. Also, highly uncomfortable even in the future. I'm telling you.
They're awful.
They're highly uncomfortable now. Would not want to sit on them on his ship. They all sit there together for more exposition dump. We find out Romulans did Mars. And Raffi was right all the time. It's depressing. That's all we get, essentially. All this for nothing is Romulans did Mars. Soji, who we haven't talked about in a while because she's just kind of ancillary to this plot at this point, essentially is activated again. But instead of kill mode, it's brain mode. And now she knows everything. Right? Because the concession here is that Rios already knew her, but not her. Those 2 people that came to have dinner on his old ship,
one of them looked exactly like Soji.
And her name was Joanna or something. So
yeah, that was a weird thing. Like the one guy had this really weird like hippie name, and she's just like Joanna.
Beautiful Flower was the other one's name.
Yes, that's it.
And what I want to note, what's important here is that the assumption is that all of the synthetics on this planet look like Soji from her twin sister. Now with this one, the assumption is that they all look like her, like all of Data's look like Data, lore before the rest of them. What I find interesting is that in terms of synthetics, we only know of a couple that exist, and most of them look the same. Data, lore, B4 are the Soong androids.
All the
of
Soong
Data clone
looked like Dr. Soong because
obviously
because they were all being played by the same actor, but
and we have those 3.
They explained it away as him being kind of conceited.
But that's not the only one we have. The 4th Soong android is his wife.
That's right.
So he made his wife as a Soong android, which everyone totally forgets about because it was only that one episode.
After his wife left him.
Yes, his wife left on the ship with everyone. And then he made her to be with him. So there's 4. What's interesting in this encounter on the Ibn Majid is that, and why a flashback was super necessary here and would have been super cool and helpful in so many ways instead of being exposition in the episode.
Well, we got a drawing.
Is because we got a drawing of Rios and Joanna, but no mention of what Beautiful Flower looked like.
No.
Not even a mention of Rios or anyone. He didn't say both of them look like you.
No.
Only Joanna.
Whatever her name was.
Jonah, or whatever her name was. We don't get any information on Beautiful Flower. So that leads me to believe that has to be someone else. Yeah. Now, my question here is, how involved is Bruce Maddox in this at all?
It doesn't sound like very much.
Right. Essentially, he's still playing Bruce Maddox from TNG at this point because when the synthetic ban had happened, he left. And he left to this planet, this magical planet of synths. Isn't that the assumption that we're led to believe from this story? He didn't go there and create them, right?
No.
He left because they were banned after Mars, and somehow he knew about this planet?
And I mean, Dr. Soong couldn't have made them because
he's dead.
He was dead like season 3 or 4.
You can't create
TNG.
These Soji clones in 14 years, but it has to be less because the Ibn Majid has to happen at least a couple of years prior. So we're talking 10 years roughly. You don't bail Earth with very little to go on except a B4 unit that is in a box that you don't haven't figured out to disappear into a planet and being able to create an entire race of synthetics. So I'm thinking that Bruce Maddox had very little to do with anything. And my biggest fear right now at this point in time is that Data did this somehow.
Well, I mean, Bruce Maddox's entire arc in this show has been pointless up to now.
Yes.
Why would this be any different?
But who created this? Who created this race of synthetics that have DNA tied to Data? It can't be Bruce Maddox. I mean, it can be because the show's writing is stupid, but it can't be Bruce Maddox in terms of time. No one would believe you to create an entire race of synths in a 10-year time span. On your own, with no funding, on a planet that was probably empty before. And yet, first contact with this planet happens a few years prior to where we are right now. None of this makes any sense. So, the last thing I want to touch on is right after this. Soji goes nuts and smashes the picnic table and says, "Excuse me, I gotta go," because she knows what's happening. Drops her fries. She has fries and a milkshake like she's going to fucking Wendy's because Rios remembers that that's what Joanna liked, and everyone's like, "Whoa!" So now everyone is on the same page, even though they've been all doing their own adventures. Remember, this is episode 8. We're running out of time here, and it's fucking everything is still happening that should have happened in episode 4. So she goes and takes over the ship, right? And she starts hitting buttons and doing all this stuff. And some interesting things happen right here. She knows where her planet is now. They know where her planet is now. They're going there right away. She's like, I got to go help my people.
She also knows where a Borg transwarp conduit is.
She knows where a Borg transwarp conduit is. 2, that Borg transwarp conduit works.
Yeah.
Which we've established in Voyager that they don't work anymore. That was the point of destroying the Borg transwarp hub. They don't fucking work. It's not like you found a leftover one. That's not how that transwarp system works.
What if they rebuilt it?
Then they would have already been here. It's the same queen.
Mm-hmm.
If the Borg had rebuilt the transwarp conduit and have access to the Alpha Quadrant, I swear to God, everyone would have been like, then why the fuck aren't the Borg just wreaking havoc?
Yeah, Cardassia ain't got shit against them.
Because she, the Borg queen, I can tell you, can carry a grudge for thousands of years, I bet.
I'm sure.
Because especially if no other race has ever done this to the Borg, right? She's like, Janeway's been a pest today, tomorrow, and in the future to me.
She came back
go fuck
to
her up.
A pest.
Yes. So the transwarp conduit thing is stupid, but I know that this is the most Star Trek thing this show has done. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that they go to the planet instead of waiting for the fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And I have here highlighted in like black Sharpie, that's the most Star Trek thing this show has done, because that is a cliche of Star Trek in almost every TNG era thing that's happening.
No, we'll cowboy it up at this random planet where we know there's going to be trouble.
We'll cowboy it up on our own when we absolutely don't need to cowboy it up. The fleet is meeting at Eridai 6.
The fleet's going to be too late, man. We got to get there.
To engage the Borg. No, we got to get there first. Nemesis. The fleet is falling back with the Bozeman to this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to rendezvous with them. No, we're going to fight it out in this nebula. The Tachyon grid fleet. We're falling back with the Romulans at this point. And Data says with the Sutherland, no, we're staying here and activate our Tachyon grid and photons. That's literally the only thing so far that has been stock Star Trek is fuck the fleet. We're going to cowboy it up.
Very Charge of the Light Brigade.
But at least in those situations, there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
So in Nemesis, yes, the Enterprise was falling back to the fleet because Shinzon's ship was fucking invisible. It had a perfect cloak.
The Enterprise.
Yes. It was
a dinky little like cargo ship.
Yes, it was the Enterprise. They're falling back, and so Shinzo went after him. There was reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Tachyon grid in TNG with Data, again, a Data episode where he was captain of the Sutherland, was ordered to fall back with the fleet to rendezvous somewhere, and he said, no, we got to do this. You can name a couple other times where a fleet was supposed to meet them and it didn't, or something happened. In this situation,
it wasn't going to be there on time.
Yeah, in this situation, there's no reason for it because Picard already has his fleet. It is amassing at Deep Space 12. Little pause there because everyone's like, oh, please say 9. Deep Space.
Don't say 9. I don't want them to ruin 9.
I was about to cry if they were going to mention Deep Space 9 for a second. Deep Space 12. So meet the fleet at Deep Space 12. Go. They decide to take the rinky-dink ship that has apparently, I don't think has even photon torpedoes on it.
It had trouble with a 100-something-year-old Romulan
warbird. A 100-year-old Romulan warbird, not even piloted by a Romulan crew. Literally by just
like one guy.
Yeah, a cartel of some dudes. And like AK-47s took this over. So this ship is heading to the planet for reasons. It's really dumb. It's a very un-Picard maneuver thing to do. It's like, no, for Picard, it should be like, yeah, we should totally rendezvous with the fleet, especially for a guy who went out of his way to contact Starfleet Command knowing that there's bad guys in Starfleet and knowing that he needs help. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He gets all excited when Soji says, we're going, and everyone agrees that he takes the captain's chair and looks like a crappy, silly old man because he looks over at the camera like, I don't know how to fly this thing. Remember that part of the episode right at the end? He is a pilot, remember, in TNG where they were stuck.
He has a maneuver named after him.
He has a Picard maneuver, but do you remember where they're stuck in that asteroid field? And they're pulled from power? And they say, hey, we only have thrusters and momentum has to take us out of this, but if we crash, we're dead. And Data's like, oh, I'll do it. I can pilot this out. And Picard says, no, this is my ship. It's my responsibility. And he uses the LCAR menu system to initiate thrusters to get out of the asteroid belt because they got in there and all their power was drawn out by some sort of thing. I forget what episode it is.
Generators or whatever, yeah.
Yes. But it's one of the ones in the bottle. It's where he pilots the ship out himself. He is a pilot. He is a very good one. He was also the pilot, the con officer on Stargazer. He knows how to fly ships. Mm-hmm. Okay. 14 years ago.
He was the captain of the Stargazer, but he piloted it when everything was going bad. So,
yes. Yeah. He also pilots and does attack. He knows how to run a ship. He knows every situation. He leaves the Enterprise E to help with the Mars fleet. We know this. This is told to us, right? Mm-hmm. That he leaves the Enterprise to go help his little fleet. Riker and them talk about it. So that's 14 years ago. Probably longer, but at least around 14 years ago. You can't tell me that every ship in the Federation, all this new technology was put into play within the last 10 years.
Sure, why not?
I mean, you can, but it's stupid.
It's convenient and dumb and
even if you did, you can't tell me that Picard, someone who wants to be back out there, isn't keeping up on what's going on. Because this technology still works in his chateau room, still works at the actual chateau because he's seen using touchscreens and motions. But then all of a sudden he sits in the pilot chair and he doesn't know how to fly this ship.
Well, it was to set up a funny moment, you know.
It was to set up a funny moment.
For idiots.
That's what this show is for. This show is about moments to say, hey, do you remember this? Or, hey, see, he's different. Oh, look at the old man. He doesn't know what he's doing. Let's make a joke about it. To the lowest common denominator. I have it written down here. Picard not knowing how to fly is just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a quick talk during it where they get to the transwarp conduit, which is just opens because apparently anyone can open it.
Rio stops her because he's like, you're not going to set up any of these protective fields or anything?
Like chronoton fields and
fucking shearing field. That's it.
Yeah, you need all these things to work. And then her response is, I just know. Maybe when I was Soji on this cube, I just knew that Being on the cube doesn't make you know, lady. Okay? There was no indication given to us that you like accessed files or downloaded things when you were all crazy. You went crazy, and 10 minutes later, you were off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Up to that point, you were totally normal and being monitored. So you don't know what a transword conduit is. Shut up. But Picard, as they're talking before they make the jump, he notes that he served on the Reliant. Was that ever in his record?
It's a different Reliant.
I know it's a different Reliant, but just like, is that just a new ship in his record? Has that ever been mentioned before? Because I know there's like 4 or 5 Reliants in history.
That's actually accurate. Let me look it up, actually.
You know what I mean? Like, because
you can
if
look
you're going to say something like that, like, oh, I was the night shift, when I served aboard. And I was like, well, just say the Stargazer. Everyone knows that, right? You were on that ship for a while.
The USS Reliant 24th Century, Memory Alpha.
Yes, the 24th one.
Lieutenant Nakamura was assigned to the vessel when he first met Ensign Jean-Luc Picard. Nakamura had voiced strong views to Picard about snap inspections and the admirals who pulled them. That's from the Measure of a Man.
Was that a Nebula class? What ship was that?
That
couldn't have been a Nebula class. He was still serving with TOS movie uniforms, right? What ship was the Reliant?
It doesn't show one.
Yeah, because when we see him on the Stargazer, he's TOS movie era uniform.
Except in that first episode, because they didn't have all the uniforms. They were just using whatever. Uniforms.
Yeah, that's true. Because whenever, that's weird. Oh, God, the name Reliance just everywhere. It's weird.
Well, they deliberately named it after the ship from the Wrath of Khan.
Yes, they did, and they later said it's something else. But if he was on the Stargazer is one of the crossover ships, right? Like the Enterprise C, the ship that bridges TOS to TNG, that era of in between, where the ships were new but the uniforms are still old.
Oh yeah, him serving on the Reliant was from a cut scene from The Measure of a Man. So
it's not even in there.
Yeah, it's in the Blu-rays that were remastered, but it's not. It's not on CBS All Access because I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember that being mentioned at all because I haven't seen the remasters and stuff. See?
Yeah, it's the remaster.
What a weird pull to do it from.
It's the one where they stuck all the little bits that were cut out that were actually finished.
That's so dumb. Oh God. And so they jump into the transwarp barrier without any issues. And here's a little stinger for the end. Romulan dude is still following them.
Oh, of course.
He jumps through somehow. So I don't know how that is even possible. I don't know if Aggie's involved. I don't really care at this point. And again, we haven't touched on 7 in about 20 or 30 minutes because this show's structure fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It feels like we're talking forever about it, but that's because the show fucking like forgets people and
they bounce around to like 5 or 6 different plots an episode.
Yeah, we're doing there's 4 plots going on. The last thing we see of 7, which I said I touch on a little bit again, that bugs me.
Legolas says, "Are you going to assimilate me now?"
A little bit, but it's the Romulans all leave the ship and all transport or warp to wherever they're heading.
I wanted to talk about this. So she's leaving the ship.
Yeah.
And she's talking to a guy like over her shoulder or whatever and doesn't see him get attacked by some remaining Borg.
Yes, very silly.
And then they start mobbing her like this is
Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, the one like in the mall. I have that screen cap for this. They're seeing that now. I was like, whoa, that's a weird reference to go Dawn of the Dead style.
Yeah.
And remember, she's a ninja and she didn't hear them. XBs kill her things off. So apparently she's dead or assimilated, one of the two.
No, they transport her out.
Oh, they transport her out? I didn't even see that because I was just laughing at the Dawn of the Dead thing.
Yeah, I had to go back and watch it again, and that's when I saw.
Which is incredibly stupid not to just kill her, but whatever. So all the Romulans leave and are heading to Soji's home planet with very small ships. Very small ships.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the kind of ship that Romulan brother has. They're not Scorpion fighters from Nemesis, Romulan fighters, which are dumb, but they're not the little ones. But they don't look much bigger than a runabout. So they're essentially, I would say they're like Romulan runabouts almost. Cool bit-sized ships. I love a runabout, but not enough to cause planetary destruction.
No.
You know what I mean? Like if they had the cube and took it, I would get it. I mean, that's one of the thoughts we had, like, oh, they're going to be in charge of that. But they just leave on small fighter craft ships. Like if you had, I don't know, even if you had a dozen runabouts, it would take a long time to destroy a planet, let alone a planet that probably has some sort of defensive grid or other ships of its own. Which calls into question why Picard wouldn't just wait for the fleet. Everything we're seeing right now is such on a small scale that literally the USS Reliant from the TOS movie could show up and fuck everything up.
Pretty much.
You know what I mean? Like
it's just bigger and it has more power available.
You could have the Reliant from that era show up and still dwarf Rios's ship. You could dwarf every Romulan ship that is heading over there. With shields up, it could still probably take care of everything on its own.
A Miranda class, a Soyuz class could probably.
Could you imagine the Enterprise E showing up and be like, you guys are all fucking playing with toys down there. What are you doing? Fuck you all. You're dead.
Yeah.
Like this negates everything. Like Picard. The smart thing to do is literally what the Admiral told you. We have a fucking fleet coming. Here's a couple of ships. Take them. Blow everyone up. Even if they're there, you'll be fine.
No, the fleet's going to be too late, man.
The fleet's going to be too fucking late. Okay. And so that whole Borg section is dumb. But what I want to note, and it was really quick, right as the point where Elnor says, "Are you going to assimilate me now?"
Yeah.
7 isn't talking. The queen of the cube is talking. And she says in a line, "No, Annika still has work to do." And then she disconnects.
They're going to drop the Borg cube on that shit.
Next season. I bet you next season. Because this season's coming to an end.
Episode 10.
Or a lead into next is a see you next season. Because 7 doesn't say, no, I'm not going to, I figured there was going to be a joke there. I figured he says, "You're not going to simulate me now." She shuts down and goes, "I thought about it." You know what I mean? Like just something cute to move on from. But the queen of that cube says, Annika still has work to do, which suggests, yeah, she will. But right now she needs to save this cube or something, or get all her people back on.
Well, she reacted like they died in the vacuum of space.
Yes, also, yeah, that's stupid. She knows.
Stupid.
She's a Borg. They're fine. You just get a big net, scoop them back up. They're fine. So I don't know what's going to happen. I also like Elnor. Just so misused this entire season.
What is he doing? Why is he here?
He didn't serve any purpose in this story so far.
He failed to save you.
There was like a whole episode around him. A fucking worthless episode. We got this cool Legolas ninja. He does one choppy chop on a Borg cube, and then Picard's like, "Fuck you," and he's like, "Oh, I'm free of you. Bye." And that's it.
Friendship ended with Elnor. Now Soji is my best friend.
Yes. It's just like they did him fucking dirty. Like, this is the closest thing Picard has to like a possible son connection. Like, I need to do right by him. Remember that whole episode was like,
oh yeah,
I need to be like a father figure. I need to be there. And then the first sign of trouble is like, get the fuck out of here. You're out. I got Soji. If
you're not listening to me, if you're not listening to me, I'm gonna drive off and I'm gonna leave you at this gas station, kid.
Yes, that's literally what happened. Elnor got left at a gas station, and Soji is now his daughter. Because remember last episode, Nepenthe, Riker's little girl, was like, "Well, Picard could be yours. He could be your dad if you wanted to." I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? You already bailed on Romulan kid here. What the fuck is happening? I am so mad about this, like, for no reason.
Look, Picard went out to get some smokes.
Like, and came back 12 years later. It's like, "Oh, sorry, dude. I know we've literally known each other for only a week and a half, but fuck you." It's so bad. It's so bad. Like, there's so much cool stuff about this series that's happening outside of this series. Everything Picard is doing makes him seem like the bad guy in this. He's yelling at the Admiral, even though he's right. He has no right to. He's yelling at the Admiral when he's right and he needs her help. So he should be like, hey,
come on, please, let's come together on this.
That scene didn't make any fucking sense to me. And she's right. Shut the fuck up. He's like, I have this evidence. He should have been. Picard's like, hey, I know we got off on the wrong foot last time, but this is what's happening. I'm forwarding you all the information. I need your help. I absolutely need. He could be mad about it. He could be like, I need your help. We need to save these people. This is what needs to be doing. And she still could have been like, Picard, you're a fucking asshole, but your information, I can trust it. We're going to do this. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. He's still an asshole. He's clapping for a drunk Raffi last episode. He is. He believes Aggie that she can't be like a spy or have a track record. He's the worst.
Yeah, they almost instantly forgive her.
Yes. And Picard never even questions it. It's like, nah, she can't be it. She's fine. Raffi's just like, buddy, you keep bringing people on the ship, and every time you bring them on the ship, something fucking weird happens. You're bad. Picard is the bad guy of his own series. If he wasn't this asshole, if he was normal TNG Picard, none of this would have happened.
Oh, of course not.
He would have been just like, okay, let's look at this logically. Let's get things done. But no, Raffi is the only one making any goddamn sense, and she's a crazy conspiracy theorist. I hate this show. And next week on Star Trek Picard is the synthetic planet that makes no sense now if Maddox isn't involved.
I kind of checked out for the scenes for next week, so
they're on the planet. They don't show any other synths. There's some arguing. I don't see any Romulan shooting, so I'm guessing they're saving that to the end. A little temple thing. And Picard piloting the ship finally because it's burning up in the atmosphere. It looks dumb.
Yep.
It's all a prelude to a giant, big Battle of the Binary Stars type of episode finale.
You know, I hate that name, Battle of the Binary Stars. It's not indicative of anything.
No.
You know how many binary star systems there are?
Yeah, it's not very, in terms of Star Trek, very memorable. So next week,
play it up like it is.
Next week, I think we're just going to get a lot of another exposition-heavy episode with some fake tension. Because they have to save the big battle for 10.
Yeah.
They have to save the big... They've written themselves too early into this to have any explanation of what's going on. It's episode 9, and we're getting the synth planet, even though we haven't built to it in any meaningful way. We have no understanding of the synth planet other than we just realized it was a synth planet, right? Yeah. This episode, up until this point, it's just where Soji and her sister were from. So I was writing it off at that point going, that makes sense. Maybe Maddox went and just built these two somehow.
He's like, oh, hey, you have all the work done for me.
Yes, or maybe he found, I don't know, maybe this was a planet or a moon that Soong had that he didn't tell anyone about. Something stupid. But like, oh, he found technology that helped him. Something stupid. Not like, oh, he went to a synth planet already and just then helped create the... No. And they're going to bring data back for something. If
they're going to do Q, right?
If this is another Soong android on there, I'm going to be fucking pissed. This is Lore down there? And Lore gets involved somehow? Because I don't think he's dead, right?
He's not dead. He was deactivated in his last episode, but he's not.
If this is a Lore thing, I am going to break this television screen. I'm going to break this goddamn screen. It has to be the stupidest thing you could imagine.
Here's my crackpot thought, because this is the stupidest thing I can imagine. Q shows up and he's like, "Oh, you missed Data. Here he is."
It's going to be so stupid.
Oh, God.
I'm trying to think of the dumbest possible thing, and either it
No,
can't be
here's something
data. Data's one neuron can build an entire civilization in a couple of years. This is the stupidest fucking thing.
No, here's my stupid idea. This is all a Reg Barkley holodeck program.
It's all a hollow program.
Because
he just
when we
walks
get to
out
the planet,
like
all of the beautiful robots are like, "Oh, Reg, you're so strong."
and he just walks
so
out the
amazing.
holodeck, and it's like in a TNG episode. It's the middle of a TNG season 7 episode.
I'd appreciate that more.
It's like the season finale of Enterprise where Riker just walks out onto the Pegasus episode.
I didn't like that, but I'd like this. I'd like it now.
Yeah, it's just Barkley at
it just fixes everything.
He just got done like talking to Voyager in like season 6 of that show. Oh, fuck.
That was actually a good episode.
Oh my god. I don't know where it's going to end, but it's going to be bad. It has to be, the revelation of the synth planet has to be stupid, because that's the only way it will make sense. There's no logical way if this. What we already know, one positronic neuron, which is a stupid thing to say, can hold all of Data's memory engrams, and like, how does that work? What is a positronic neuron?
Well, I mean, the positronic brain, that's what Data is. That's why Data is just a shout out to Asimov, because the entire conceit of iRobot is, we invented positronic brains, and
you could recreate an entire human being with one neuron. It's just a stupid thing to say, though.
It's like he's Cell or something.
Yes.
From Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, essentially he's Cell.
From a single cell, I was able to come back.
It's like
everybody who's not me.
It's like if I clipped my fingernail, I could recreate myself and all my tics and all my emotional capacity and history from like a clip nail. It's stupid. It's stupid.
I think I brought it up last week, but remember Multiplicity?
Yes.
By like number 4, it's all screwed up, and he's like,
it's all. Yes, they're all just like kind of dumb. There's no way this can end well. No way. Impossible to wrap this up with a bow that makes sense.
No.
And it has to be a Borg-related season next season, because you're leaving 7 of 9, coming back as a Borg queen, taking over this probably against her will, and so Guinan's involved, and if Guinan's involved, Q's involved, because there's no reason
not to at that point. Yeah,
there's no reason for Guinan to be there unless she's given aid about Q, because that is the biggest part of her arc.
And she hates him.
Yes,
she cannot stand him. The episode where he loses his powers, like, Data's like, yeah, there's some debate as to whether or not he's actually human, and she just grabs a fork and stabs him in the
and there's some interest there, because remember, when Q meets Guinan, he's like, what is she doing here? She causes nothing but problems.
She's a monster.
He is legitimately concerned about her in a way he has never shown to anything or one in the universe.
And that was when he had powers.
Even to other Q.
Yeah.
He's just like, just another Q. But Guinan, he was just like, that's some fucking witch, dude.
You get that shit away from me.
I don't want to deal with that. Like, in a way, like, there's something there. So to have her come back outside of a single episode appearance where maybe Picard is sitting somewhere for some stupid reason, if you're actually going to invite her back on to be a part of it, then it has to be centered something around Q and the Borg.
Yeah.
It has to be. There's no, you got to.
By necessity.
Because otherwise she's just going to be wasted potential. It's like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to meet her in a bar somewhere? Come on. Don't do her like that.
Yeah.
She's fucking Guinan.
I totally expect that.
I mean, that's what I expect. She just shows up randomly, and he's at Starbase 12 after all this thing goes down, and she comes in and be like, you need a drink? Oh, blah, 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 blah.
I keep some of the good stuff behind the bar.
Behind the bar. No, it doesn't make any sense. So I see this because 7 hasn't been utilized very much, only 3 times, right, in this series so far.
Yeah,
And there hasn't been a 7 specific episode. She showed up at the end of 1 to pass out.
Mm-hmm.
She told off Picard in 1 and then gave her the chip, and then she bailed. And then this one when she comes back at the last minute. So she also
shot a lot of guys.
She also shot a lot of guys. She's only had 5 or 6 lines, really, or like moments. And that's a big get. And to turn her into a Borg cube. So they're going to do something with that. So we'll see what happens. 2 more episodes.
Her star kind of rose a bit.
Oh yeah. No, she's currently on a TV show. I forget which one. She's on a show right now.
Oh yeah.
She went on to do Mortal Kombat as Sonya Blade for the
second one, or
the DVD releases of them, the ones that were on YouTube movies.
Oh, I never saw those.
Yes, they were really good. Where they did them. I forget the name of them, but I saw them. They redid Mortal Kombat.
I know
Justin, the guy. I think it was the guy that did the last Star Trek film.
Mm-hmm.
The director of that one of Star Trek Beyond did those.
Really?
Of The Conjuring. I think James
Beyond.
Wan or something like that. I think it was him. I'm not sure.
James Lee or James Wan,
something like that. I think he did those.
He also did all the he did a bunch of the Fast and Furious.
He did the Fast and Furious. She was in that as Sonya Blade, and that's when they redid Mortal Kombat to be modern.
But like after Voyager, they made a big deal of her being on, I think it was Boston Public.
Yes, she was on there. She's on a show now. So she's been steadily doing stuff. So getting her back is a big get. Mm-hmm. So you're going to use her more. So we'll see what happens. Let us know in the comments below what you think is going to show up for episode 9 of Star Trek Picard. Before we all know what's going to happen in Star Trek in episode 10, it's going to be Battle of the Binary Stars, shooty, end with a cliffhanger of what's to come, and let us wait 6 months, which is good. I need a break because the show has already done a number to me, and I don't like it. This was just kind of setting the table for the end.
You know what irks me about Battle of Binary Stars? It basically hits with the exact same like impact as battle between the 2 drugstores across the street from one another.
It's like when a Starbucks opens and across the street it's a Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, or there's a CVS and a Walgreens right across from each other.
That's what it feels like.
Where I live now, there's so many of that.
Just a bunch of ships facing each other, shooting like it's a goddamn naval battle. Mm-hmm. Directly at each other, not even moving. That was not a good battle.
No. Well, it was dark and it was
really dark. It was ships posted up, shooting straight ahead at each other, like fucking the Revolutionary War. Oh boy, it was bad. So let us know what you think, and we will be back with you next week for another episode of Star Trek Picard, because this is what we got to do. And there's only 2 more left, thank God. So you can enjoy our summertime in a Star Trek free zone before Discovery new season comes out and the new season the first season of Section 31. So don't think that we're going to be done with Star Trek, because there's a lot more. And I got to pay for this goddamn CBS subscription somehow. So that's it for tonight. We're just going to leave you with an extended Star Trek Picard one.
Yeah.
Head over to gambitmag.com if you want to see all our daily stuff.
See all the things that have been canceled. It's been quiet, mostly because everyone is on lockdown from this sickness that I don't want to mention, because videos have been getting demonetized on YouTube, and all the videos I watch now have code name things so that they don't get flagged for it. So we're going to code name this sickness the Star Trek Picard sickness. Don't stay home so you don't get Star Trek Picard. Don't get down with the sickness.
Don't get down with the sickness. Leave it from this country.
Reggie joined GameStop's board of directors.
That's true. Go to the website. There's some fun stuff to read amid everything is shut down and you're going to be stuck at home anyways. So if you're stuck at home, hey, this is like episode 9 for us. Go back, enjoy some podcasts, give us some likes, give us some follows. You're not working. You're not doing anything.
I stream on Twitch.
We're all on. Yeah, we got people are on Twitch on the channel all the time. go do some stuff. So until next time, we'll catch you all later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Peace.